where amid growing outrage, popular podcaster Ranveer Allahbadia has issued a public apology for his controversial, incestuous remarks on fellow influencer Samay Raina's YouTube show, India's Got Latent. In an emotional plea, Allahbadia admitted his mistake, stating that he does not know how to make jokes and should never have made those comments.
My comment wasn't just inappropriate, it wasn't even funny. Comedy is not my forte. I'm just here to say sorry. Many of you asked if this is how I wish to use my platform, and obviously this is not how I wish to use it. I'm not going to give any context or justification or reasoning behind whatever happened. I'm just here for an apology. I personally had a lapse in judgment. It wasn't cool on my part. The podcast is watched by people of all ages. Don't want to be the kind of person that takes that responsibility lightly. And family is the last thing that I would ever disrespect. Need to use this platform better. That's been my learning from this whole experience. I promise to just get better. I've asked the makers of the video to remove the insensitive sections from the video. And all I can say in the end is, I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me as a human being.
Now, the entire controversy started after a clip from the show went viral, triggering nationwide condemnation. The footage shows Allahbadia making lewd and incestuous remarks. But what's more shocking is that the entire panel, including host Samay Raina, laughed along. Multiple complaints have now been filed both against Ranveer Allahbadia and the host of India's Got Latent, Samay Raina, seeking an apology and action against them for their vulgar comments. The National Human Rights Commission has also taken cognizance, terming the remarks as deeply objectionable and asked YouTube to delete the video from the platform. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has also condemned Allahbadia's comments, stating that while everyone has freedom of speech, but that freedom ends when it encroaches on the rights of others. Even the personalities from the film and TV industry have slammed the podcaster, saying he crossed the line.
बहुत भद्दे तरीके से कुछ चीज़ों को कहा गया है, प्रेजेंट किया गया है, ऐसा मुझे भी पता चला है, जो बिल्कुल गलत है। फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच सभी को है, लेकिन हमारी फ्रीडम वहाँ समाप्त हो जाती है जब हम किसी और के फ्रीडम पर इनक्रोच करते हैं, और इस प्रकार का इनक्रोचमेंट ठीक नहीं है। मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि अभिव्यक्ति इसकी भी कोई मर्यादाएं है। हमारे समाज में हमने अश्लीलता के भी कुछ नियम तैयार किए हैं। अगर उनको कोई पार करता है तो ये बहुत गलत बात है। अगर ऐसी कोई बात होती है तो उसके ऊपर कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए।
And joining me right now is senior parliamentarian from the Rajya Sabha from Shiv Sena UBT, Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi, joining me right now at Mirror Now. Thank you, Ms. Chaturvedi, for taking our time and joining us over here at Mirror Now. Ms. Chaturvedi, you are also a member of the Information and Technology and Communications Standing Committee, and you're also a mother. Then my question to you is, where do you exactly draw the line when it comes to putting filters on the online or social media content? How much of a monitoring can you possibly do as a parent, and how much of an embargo can you possibly put from the government's end?
Firstly, I'm all for freedom of speech. I'm all for not having the government step in and tell you all what the standards and boundaries should be. And I will always be an advocate for freedom of speech. However, freedom of speech constitutionally mandates you to use your freedom of speech with a sense of responsibility, where you're not causing any public disorder, where you're crossing boundaries of morality and decency, and various other restrictions that are there. I would want the content creators to create good content which does not go against the constitutional mandate of freedom of speech, which leads them to a situation where where probably the government will have to intervene. In this particular case, we must understand the person speaking what he has spoken is not some small-time podcaster. He is someone who's been awarded by the Prime Minister for his content creation. Can you imagine someone getting a Padma Shri or Padma Vibhushan, then indulging so irresponsibly on conversations and platforms such as this? That is where the problem arises. You have been interviewing several ministers of the current cabinet. And for you to be so irresponsible and get away with an apology is unacceptable. The reason I have said I will raise this is because if the content creators refuse to draw these lines, these boundaries, not that this is about, you know, moral standards, etc., but this is about society, corrupting the society and crossing boundaries of respect for your own parents and indulging in this kind of a behavior. So that is why I will raise it. No government would want to interfere as much as the current government wants to interfere, but I will always stand for freedom of speech, but please understand, as citizens of India, we have responsibility too.
You know, I'm going to quote, you have taken to the social media platform X and you have tweeted saying that, just a reminder from the Constitution of India, freedom of speech and expression, 19(1)(a) and 19(2). 19(1)(a) secures to every citizen the freedom of speech and expression and should be read with clause 2, which empowers the state to put reasonable restrictions on the following grounds: security of the state, friendly relationship with foreign states, public order, decency and morality. I'm going to stop here, Ms. Chaturvedi. When it comes to decency and morality, these are relative terms. How is one to define what exactly is decent, what exactly fits the moral bandwidth for that matter? Because if I have to be devil's advocate and put a counter question, it is on a YouTube platform. You always have a choice to decide what you want to watch.
While I agree with you, and I absolutely appreciate the question coming from you, I'll give you an example. If you go further down that tweet, it also includes defamation. And in my case, where I had to take this up in a committee, that there were some people who were defaming me, indulging in character assassination and slander, which should have been taken up. I mean, the people who are airing this kind of content should hold that responsibility, were getting away with it. And with that particular instance, I realized that that particular content was used by multiple other YouTubers to indulge in the slander that was being done. For me, it is defamation. It may not be defamation for you, and you may be okay with that. But as a citizen of this country, I will want action to be taken against that. And my constitution gives me that mandate. In this particular case, where morality or decency, yes, we need to understand that my standards of morality may not be the same standards as yours. What is in America's standards of morality or community guidelines will not apply to India. Or what India expects from these platforms to apply as community guidelines, they may think that they are not answerable to that. My question is just this, that in this particular incident, the kind of abusive words that were being used, that keeping aside, even Netflix and various other platforms, you indulge in this kind of content creation. But the crossing boundaries for me is when you start speaking about your families, your parents, and think this absolutely cool content to, to talk about your parents, their intimate life, and wanting to join in that kind of intimacy. I think that's also crossing how societal norms are set up. That, I think, is, for me, it goes beyond the calls of morality and decency. And again, these are not some small-time YouTubers. These are people who are going on popular platforms and popular entertainment shows. These are influencers who are invited to colleges to speak about their success stories. And if they go as influencers and they're using the language that they're doing, they're setting some new standards of morality, then that is problematic for me. Must understand, as a public representative, and I've given you this information, if a Padma Vibhushan or Padma Shri or Bharat Ratna is given that honor, you must understand the honor also comes with a sense of responsibility. It's the same with him. It's the same with all these people who are sitting on the panel. I saw there was a female too. There was a lady too in that who was indulging, and they were laughing about it, they were talking about it. So I think the core family values, that it crosses the boundaries, is problematic for me.
Ms. Chaturvedi, you know, this whole generation that we are looking at right now, their concept of perhaps pop culture, their concept of wokeness, their concept of perhaps what is cool is very different from where we are coming from probably. Given that scenario, then, when we are going to be putting an embargo, like you've just mentioned, that the content needs to be regulated and reviewed, a large ambit of the content then comes under its purview. Do you feel then social media, which is supposed to be a free space, putting sanctions like that may not necessarily work?
No, again, I will tell you something here. Of course, I do understand the Gen Z and what their idea of coolness is, because I'm a mother of a 21-year-old. I'm mother of an soon to be 18-year-old child. While they have very different concepts, but I do understand that they have concept about family, about a mother, about a father, and what certain boundaries not to be crossed. And at least not on public platforms. I'm very certain, and I have met a whole lot of children, a whole lot of this generation, and I try and understand them the best way I can as a mother. But I do understand, as a generation ahead of them, we have the responsibility to take our country forward, to take our children forward in a process which does not break the societal norms as we know it. And I'm sure even in America this is being debated, discussed. I'm not even asking for any regulations. Again, I'm repeating. I'm not asking for regulations. It's the regulation, self-regulation is what I would have hoped they would have done. They haven't done that. And when they refuse to do it, that is when the state steps in, right? That is my limited response to this would be that I'm not asking for a whole lot of content to be regulated. And also understand YouTube neither comes under OTT, it neither comes under traditional media, broadcast media, it comes under intermediary. And intermediaries usually end up taking a safe harbor and get away with the content that they're presenting. Like a Netflix may also be responsible under the IT Act. In this particular case, they go as intermediaries, where the platforms are not responsible for the content creators creating the content. Must understand this. There's a difference. And most of the times, we have a platform like YouTube, and again, I don't want YouTube censored in any way. Their community guidelines are set by whatever standards of morality exists, or expectations or guidelines exist in US. They also need to be sensitive to the idea that geographically, everybody's sensibilities change. We are not one homogeneous world. We are different. We speak differently. We have different languages. We wear differently. Our standards of morality differ from region to region. Again, it's not about YouTube per se, but more about self. If no citizen of India and someone who's an absolute believer of freedom of speech would want the state to come in. State can only come in when self-regulation is not being handled by people who are taking responsibility for the content they're creating. Since they did not do that,
but Mr. Chaturvedi, then, as a lawmaker,
and I, as someone,
what options as a lawmaker, what options lie with you? Of course, you're taking it up in the Standing Committee for IT and Communication. The government, from time to time, has often woken up to the fact that there needs to be a body, a panel to try and scrutinize, or perhaps put systems in place by which they can, to a certain extent, have guidelines in place, if I'm not going to be using the word called censorship for OTT. But do you feel that this is exactly where we are looking towards?
No, a broader guidelines also tell you the boundaries within which content can be created for whatever reasons. Or you differentiate between 18+ content or child appropriate content. And I don't think that is a universally accepted norm. So if someone who wants to go to the theatre is told that anything above 18+ is not for a child, for someone below 18, they respect that. So if a guidelines, I'm not saying come down heavily, punish them, put them behind bars and let them never ever create content again. Please create content, but create responsible content. Please understand they come with a whole lot of responsibility because they go as speakers, they go as, what are these college events that happen, they go as these celebrities who are giving their point of view. So my point is, understand your sense of responsibility as a citizen of India.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Chaturvedi, for taking your time and joining us over here at Mirror Now. Of course, we're talking about responsible content. And the fact is that while everybody is for freedom of speech, there will have to be certain guidelines that cannot be flouted.